It's a great time for a comic book unboxing double header. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up two orders that I placed with Atomic Avenue within the last month or two. They're two smaller orders, so I really thought I would just combine them both here and open two orders at once and kind of show you some of the books that I was looking at. And a lot of times what I end up doing is I share out these sort of value picks, or kind of these hidden gems, if you will, of books that have a pretty standard fair market value or relatively low fair market value as compared to when they're graded in a 9.4 or better. And as I'm doing my research to find newer books to share, to give you kind of a variety of different comics to look at across different publishers if I can, although I lean pretty heavily Marvel, I end up coming across the same books, and I'm like, these books are still sitting there, and I just can't help myself as a collector. There's the sort of obsessive collector in me that just looks at a particular record in my spreadsheet every day, and I'm well, almost like I have to kind of put my money where my mouth is in a way. And I always kind of go back and forth on this, right? Like if I'm going to share out a particular book, let's say, and it's a $5 book and it's $120 in a 9.8. I always feel weird because it's like, am I promoting a book that I have, or am I going to go buy that book for $5? And if I do, not that it's a conflict of interest in any way, because I'm doing all of this for fun, but it always kind of makes me feel weird. But I just, as days pass or even weeks pass, if I'm seeing the same book where the graded values are kind of remaining about the same, fair market value might be up and down a little bit, but the cost to acquire the book is just sitting there at the same price, around that suggested price that I offer, I can't help myself, and I go and I pick it up. So in these couple of orders, I have some of those books. One order in particular was kind of weird. They randomly had first issue of a modern book, and I think that was the reason that I built the order. It was around the fact that they had it there for cover price, so I was really happy to see it. I think it's now at least twice cover, if not three times cover. And at the very end of the video, I'll show you what I paid for the orders and compare the cost to acquire the books against the fair market values. And I'm also interested in one of the orders in particular. I think it's the same one that has that first issue of the modern series. I think half the order was canceled. I'm curious to see what happened with the order in terms of what's inside. Like I know which books were canceled, but I think if I remember right, the seller may have included another book in there, or tried to make up for it in some way. I don't know. But, a seller that's canceling books, I always wonder too. I guess the skeptic in me is thinking, are these books that, because of my order, maybe got a little bit of attention? You're like, I don't really want to sell these books at this price, so I'm just going to cancel it and say they were lost. This happens on any platform, not just Atomic Avenue, but for me, it happens pretty often in Atomic Avenue. When I share these unboxings, I don't really go through the canceled books because it doesn't matter. I didn't pay for the books. They obviously didn't have them or didn't want to send them to me. I never received them. So I never really include that data, and I'm not going to include it this time. But it does happen pretty often on Atomic Avenue. And I had tried selling on that platform, and I did notice, like, in terms of your seller ratings, that you would get dinged if you didn't ship books fast enough, or if you did cancel books. I think with eBay, as a seller, you can cancel like a pre-order and nobody really cares except for the buyers that missed out on the pre-order. But I wish there was more of a mechanism in place to prevent sellers from canceling orders. There's really no consequence or negative outcome. Like, I feel like if you force the seller to maybe give more money back than they should, and I'd have to think this through really to have the idea make sense. But if you spent $5 on a book and the seller says, nope, I don't have it, it's canceled, I'm going to give you $5 back, it's almost like, but what if you gave the buyer like a 20% credit on a future order? and you were forced to do that, then as a seller, if that book is in your hand and you'd be doing the math and you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't cancel this book. I should actually just honestly send it off. I'm not saying that the seller was being dishonest. I'm just saying cancellations happen more frequently than I think most people realize. And most people don't make a big deal about it. Most buyers don't, because again, as long as you're getting your money back, and what's nice about this seller as well, on top of getting that refund, is I wasn't charged anything extra. Like, what I do is I order so that the total amount of the order goes above their minimum amount to unlock free shipping, and then when books are canceled, then my total order amount drops below. But as long as they still ship the books for free, and maybe that's part of the hit that they're taking. It's like, well, now I'm sending fewer books, I'm making less money, and I'm paying for shipping on top of that. And it really does cut into the margin. But I would love to see a platform where the seller is held a little bit more accountable, and not just for canceled books, but for grades. I mean, you name it. Like, it'd be probably pretty difficult to track. A lot of it would seem very manual, but anything to try and keep sellers more honest with the books that they're trying to push on it. Talk to us about or sell. But I'm just trying to come up with some creative ideas to help buyers by enforcing more rules related to accountability on behalf of sellers. But what I want to do right now, instead of coming up with all the ways to fix maybe even a problem that doesn't exist, is open up these 2 orders of comic books, show you what I bought and what I paid for them. So here we go. Okay, here are the 2 orders from Atomic Avenue. We've got one sent priority mail, and naturally the other sent media mail. This is something interesting. I paid for shipping on this one. I did not for this one. These sellers that provide like free shipping, I think they just pick the absolute cheapest way possible. Thankfully, it wasn't ransacked by USPS or open or anything like that. So it did arrive safely. But seriously, if you're a professional seller of comic books, please don't use media mail. Anyway, all right, I'm going to unbox both of these and take a look at the comics inside. Okay, here we are. So the first order is the one with all of the canceled items. So I ordered a bunch of Bronze Age Defenders books, and the seller told me that I don't know, he misplaced them or couldn't find them. He made up some story about, oh man, I was selling those and my online inventory wasn't in sync with my collection. Whatever, you have to just kind of go with it. So here's what he sent. Oh, and it looks like he did include some Defenders books in here. So, okay, the packing list only shows the books that he had in stock. But here's what he sent, I guess, for free. Sonic the Hedgehog free comic book day. Again, what I'd love to do is press these. I mean, I've got a whole stack of Hulk 181s that need pressing, but these are the books I like to press. Like something like this, I would say, is not necessarily a common comic book defect, but you do see it. I'm trying to get it right in the light there, but kind of difficult. Right in this corner, these pages are kind of folded over. There are color breaks, but I love to just oversteam these, put them through the press, and see if there's really any improvement that can be done about this stuff. These are my favorite books to practice on. Okay, so he did send Defenders 48, which I don't remember if I ordered or not, and he sent me this copy in lesser condition. I don't know. This is a great storyline, though. It's one of the very first Moon Knight storylines. Moon Knight gets involved with the Defenders, and you're fighting off Scorpio, and Nick Fury's kind of wandering around like a robot clone sort of thing. It's just a fun read. So when I was reading a lot of these comics right before the Moon Knight show started, thinking there'd be some elements of his backstory, which there weren't. It pretty much deviated from most of it. I read these issues of Defenders where Moon Knight came in and wanted to order them. Unfortunately, this does look to be in not near mint condition, because I did order these in near mint. So the books that I did end up getting, here's Avengers 234. And I'm not sure what to make of the sticker at the top in terms of a barcode. I don't know if that's his inventory. I don't think I paid $2. Maybe I did, but I'll look at that later. Again, probably not a near mint copy, but really nice Al Milgrom cover. Not the best Scarlet Witch cover ever, but an issue of Avengers that I didn't have that I wanted to pick up for my personal collection. Another Avengers book that I didn't have that I was missing, Avengers 247. Again, it looks like Milgrom did the cover for this one as well. And this one's got some Eternals tie-ins. You've got the Unimind, Cersei, Star Fox, and the Avengers all together. The Judgment Axe storyline is happening right now. Eternals 2, rumored to be filmed at some point. So an interesting kind of mix of just different characters and different teams. And if I'm ever going to, I don't really necessarily plan on having like I'm going to have a full run of Avengers 1 through 400 or something like that. But I just feel like if I ever did, then let me go in and get the cheaper back issues. And I know you're supposed to work the other way. You're supposed to get the keys first, but I really don't do things the way that you're supposed to. So I get the cheaper books first. So this is the book that I was talking about. This is Grimm #1. And the seller did have this and just listed it as cover price. And I believe this one has really taken off. This could be a $10 or $15 book. I was happy to get another copy. Cover price is just cover A. Lots of different variants and late printings of this book. And, once you kind of get beyond, I would say, a reasonable number of variants and late printings, you end up falling back to cover A, or at least I do. And a great example is Something is Killing the Children, where it's like these issues have 50 different variants and then additional late printings on top of that. You end up just not being able to keep up with that many variants, and you end up just kind of falling back into looking at cover A as sort of the primary book that you want to acquire. It could just be me, but I almost just become so irritated with the sheer number of variants. Like I can't actually collect every book. I'd have to like stop buying all comics and just focus on one series and try and collect every variant of every issue. And even that seems impossible. It's so much easier just to get cover A. So this seller had cover A of Grimm #1 available at cover price. And I think this one has gone up at least 2 or 3 times cover. And it was just sitting there at cover. It listed it near mint. And I thought I'd take a chance and see how it turns out. Looks to be pretty good, but was happy to get this as part of the order. Now this one I love. I love this whole thing. It's Uncanny X-Men 175. I love this Paul Smith cover for so many reasons. You have Phoenix Jean Grey, all of the X-Men kind of fighting her, Cyclops shooting her right in the butt with his beam coming from the visor there. Well, you kind of can't unsee that now, so good job, Scott. Storm, and just the perspective and the dynamics on this cover is fantastic. The line art there in the rocks and the brick, and just perspectives. You don't often see Wolverine really looking like that. Usually he's front and center with his claws. So really just an all-around great action cover. And I've got 3 or 4 copies of this now, and I really need to get it graded. And this one looks to be pretty good. Spine's intact. Don't really see any color breaks through the bag. All of these books I got is near mint, so hopefully this is at least a 9.4, and I'd love to get this one displayed. The last book is Web of Spider-Man 93. This one really, you got 3 great characters on the cover, Spider-Man, Moon Knight, and Hobgoblin. I'd love to find this one for a couple of bucks. And this is one of those, I don't want to say is a value pick officially per se, but it's another one where they're easy to find, really cheap. I don't want to say dollar bins, but, somewhere in the $2 to $5 range. And if you can find it in a 9.8, these go for anywhere from like 50 to $100. And this is what I'm talking about, where if you get enough of these and you're buying them in quantity, it ends up building up some really great value if you're able to find these. A lot of these collectors and folks that like to get books slabbed, they really just overlook these sorts of books because it's not worth their time, but still there's good value. Now, as I kind of zoom in, of course, this is the problem. It probably does need a press. I don't see any real color breaks, but I did notice a couple of spine ticks there that would need to come out with some humidity or attack iron or both. But again, just recognizable comics. And if somebody saw this in a 9.8 for like $50, $55, they might take a chance and add this to a comic book wall. I know a lot of even LCSs, they like to have, you know, a nice inventory of wall books and things to display as folks are coming into the stores. So there's lots of different opportunities. I think it's far easier to sell this book and make 10 or $20 or add 10 or $20 of value to your collection. So a nice opportunity there. So that was the first order. And the second order here, this seller does not offer free shipping no matter what. And with Atomic Avenue, the way that they calculate shipping is simply by the number of books. They factor in the weight of each comic, and then the more that you buy, your shipping costs or your fee for shipping goes up. So because this seller is going to charge you anyway, what I've decided to do is once I find 2 or 3 books that I like, I just place the order. With the other sellers, what I'll do is maybe I'll add to my cart over the course of a few days. I'll think about an order, maybe I'll increase quantity, do different things, make sure I unlock free shipping. But for this seller, I just went ahead and bought 3 books. So here are those books. X-Men number 5. Speaking of dynamic covers, Omega Red, second appearance, Jim Lee on art. And it definitely reminds me of X-Men 213, that great Alan Davis Wolverine Sabretooth cover. It's a little bit zoomed out. And if you do zoom out, it's like the more it's zoomed out, the more chaotic and crazy the cover is. But certainly as you zoom in, so much detail there. It's just a very, very cool cover. And if you're into Omega Red spec, this has to be in that sort of stack of books that you're looking at if you're looking into Omega Red as a villain. He was rumored he was supposed to be in Black Widow, or he might be in Black Widow 2. We'll see, but a great character nonetheless. Great X-Men villain. All right, and continuing on with great artists from the 90s. This is Conan 241. And yes, I guess a Conan collector I am, because there's always a Conan book showing up in these orders. The uniqueness about this specific Conan the Barbarian issue is that we have Todd McFarlane on art here. And this is 90s McFarlane through and through. And I didn't know that he was associated with Conan. It's his only Conan book. And I love this cover, so really great. I'll say the first thing I notice is it definitely is miswrapped, and there is a dent right there in the middle. So it is not near mint that I can tell, but could be a really nice pressing candidate. But if you're a McFarlane chaser, which I kind of am to a degree, I certainly am more of a mainstream McFarlane chaser. I'm really glad I found this copy of Conan 241. And then the last book is Venom Lethal Protector number 5. Now, this original Venom solo series, Lethal Protector, that came out, love that issue 1 Mark Bagley cover with the red foil. But there were other symbiotes that were introduced later in the series, not too much later, but issue 4 had a bunch of cameos of like 4 different symbiotes. And in issue 5, it was their first full appearance and semi-cover, I guess, with hands and things. This is considered a key because it is the first full appearance of these characters, and they have recently, over the last year or two, come back in different events, even most recently in like an Extreme Carnage storyline and additional one-shots. Some of these characters even got their own book. So Spider-Man fans, Venom fans, Carnage fans who are also collecting different symbiotes, then this book is desirable because it is the first full appearance of those characters. So those are the 2 orders. Looks pretty good. The books like this where I'm like, oh man, hopefully this is a 9.8 candidate. Those are typically a little bit disappointing in terms of condition, but really nice to get an additional copy of Grimm number 1. Now let me show you what I paid for the comics in these 2 orders and compare the cost to fair market value, and we'll also take a look at some of the values if I were to get these graded in a 9.4 or a 9.8. Okay, here are the 2 orders that I placed with Atomic Avenue. The first one was from a seller named P. Bickford, and the second was T. Wolf 0713. The first order was placed on June 30th, 2022, and it ended up costing me $22.49. I believe I had paid over $50 for the order, as it included, roughly 4 or 5 different Bronze Age books. So unfortunately, I did not get those, but did acquire the 5 books plus that additional Defenders book at no charge, and that free comic book day Sonic the Hedgehog book. Second order, placed July 10th, had the Conan, Venom, and X-Men number 5 in it. Now, that order cost a little bit more at $42.84, primarily because of the $9.70 to ship and the $2.24 of tax. Now, that's kind of a new thing from Atomic Avenue. The seller is located in California, so it could have been an in-California tax thing, but I didn't expect to pay tax on this, and I'll have to think about this, because what I end up doing is taking these additional costs, shipping and tax, and I try and incorporate that into the cost of each book so that I know what I'm truly paying. So speaking of, if my math is right, these two total cost values should add up $22.49 and $42.84, and you can see especially the books from the second order jump up in cost. Now, compared to fair market value in column U, both of the orders from a raw book perspective saw an increase in value in terms of what I am adding to my collection. So a $15.51 value add, pretty much carried by Grimm number 1, and it looks like the current fair market value of Grimm number 1 is $14, and I paid cover price of $3.99 for it, so a nice $10.01 gain there. Up $1.50 on Avengers 234, $3.25 additional gain on Web of Spider-Man 93. Like I said, to me it's like a $2 to $5 book. I wasn't that far off. It cost me $2.75, and there's fair market value as reported by cover price of $6 for that book. Avengers 247 lost 25 cents on that one, so pretty much paid fair market value to acquire that book. But again, really low risk type books, hopefully with high upside potential when they're graded. We'll check out those values here in a second. To the second order, Conan cost $13.93, and that does include the tax and shipping, but it is a $25 book in just raw fair market value. So a really nice value add of $11.07. That pretty much carried this order. Even though Lethal Protector number 5 gained about $1, it's more or less a break-even book at that point. And X-Men number 5 actually overpaid at almost $14 when it is a $10 book. So something like that, that's where the additional tax and shipping makes it feel like maybe I need to reconsider ordering from the seller, just because, again, it really eats into the value margin when you're having to apply $11 of tax and shipping across 3 books. But I really wanted the Conan 241, and I really felt like it was at a good price, even with the additional fees, so I picked it up. So for that one, has a raw value add total of $8.16, total of about $24 of just raw book value, meaning if I were to take those raw books and just turn them right around, photograph them, post them online for sale, I should be able to get, based on the fair market value, a gain of about $23. So again, low risk, but hopefully high reward. Now the high reward comes in if you decide to get these professionally graded. So let me flip all of these to 9.4 because they're all near mint. There we go. They're all 9.4s. And what I like is they all do have value in a CGC 9.4. So if I pull over the CGC value column, column AB, we can see that the first order has a nice gain of $17.76, whereas the second order still operating at a loss. They do have value, but at the cost to acquire those books, you end up going under because of the cost to get these books graded at CGC. The most valuable book in a 9.4 is Avengers 234 at $62. Grimm number 1 has no value at a 9.4, so you're really hoping that that book in a near mint is coming back in a 9.8. And surprisingly, Conan, and this will often happen, which sometimes baffles me, it has the highest raw fair market value of the 8 books that I ordered, but is only worth $35 in a 9.4. You would think that there'd be some automatic formula between raw fair market value and graded value, but there's not. And that's why I have to analyze all of these values and prices book by book, because it's so inconsistent. And I love to find the inconsistencies where you can benefit, meaning it's better to buy a book raw because the graded values are out of whack and crazy and doesn't really follow the expected model, or in reverse, where there'd be a book like this where if somebody's trying to offload a Conan 241 and a 9.4 and wants to sell it to me for $30, it's better to buy that than what I did here and spend almost $14 to get it raw. So I like to look for those things. So this to me is, it's really, really strange. And if you're into McFarlane, as most comic book collectors are, and you're looking for this book, to get it in a 9.4 and out the door for $35, that's not bad when you're comparing it to the fair market value. Now the fun part, let's flip these to 9.8 and see where the ceiling is with these two orders. And now we can see really where that Conan book shines. So in a 9.8, it is a $327 book. X-Men number 5 and a 9.8, over $100 at $115, and even Venom number 5 at $89. And really, I think that yes, it does have value because of those first full appearance of those 4 symbiotes, but also this book is not crazy expensive because there's a lot of copies of Venom 5. It's easy to find, but that's where you can take advantage, right? It's an easy to find book, but still at $89, not bad. So for this order, it was an additional $390 of value if you're able to get all of these 3 books in a 9.8. Again, pretty much carried by Conan 241. The other order, a $555.09 value add if all of these books were in a 9.8. And this is what's a little strange to me. It could be a direct newsstand anomaly. I don't believe this book is $300 in a 9.8, but I can only go off of what the price guide data is. I don't believe this to be true. It's probably closer to, that $80 range, as I mentioned. I can't imagine it being $300. So I'll have to double check that one. This one seems very accurate. Uncanny X-Men 175, again, in a 9.8. If you're an X-Men collector, you know this book. You'd love to have it in a 9.8 if you're into X-Men. I can see the demand for that book, maybe settling in at about $150. But the total cost for me was $7 on that book. So really, really, again, what I would consider to be a minimal investment, even at a fair market value, $8. I mean, where's your cutoff? I mean, you could say $80, right? Let's just split the difference. Would you pay $80 for this book, raw 9.8, if you could turn it around and get a 9.8 slab and sell it for $169? Yes, I think people would love to double their money. So this is where it becomes quite ridiculous if you're able to get it in a 9.8. Now, I'm buying these books sight unseen, so there's a gamble here. I understand that. Grimm number 1, speaking of gambling, again, buying it cover price, brand new. You're hoping that brand new book is as close to 9.8 as you can. $110 for that book in a 9.8 already. And then the 2 Avengers books, $87 and $75. So the 234, if you're looking at it and you're comparing it to how 241 reacted when I bumped it from 9.4 to 9.8, 234, there was just a slight bump. So from 9.4, I forget what it was around $60 or so. And then when I moved it to 9.8, it jumped to 87, kind of a smaller increase. But still, lots of value here. $4.50 to acquire that book. So really nice potential in both of these orders. And these are the comics I love to get. Minimal investment, in that $2 to $3, all the way upwards of maybe $10 to $12 range. Buying them in quantities of like 5 to 10 books, maybe 12 books per order. And really focusing on the gap between fair market value and graded value. That's the whole point of the value picks. It's the point of kind of what I'm doing. CGC's been under fire, doing the right thing, the wrong thing, depending on who you talk to. Maybe their credibility is taking a hit. Whenever these situations happen where you're talking about, a company maybe taking a little bit of a hit or a black eye on something, I'm not concerned about my investment in my books being graded by CGC for the long run or even the short run. Maybe the short run takes a little bit of a hit, but I do believe that when there's enough backing and enough investing in something even if really something massive occurs, some massive reveal of fraud or anything like that, it it takes a long time for the value to completely evaporate. Will it go down a couple of points? Possibly. Will people shift to other rating companies like PGX or CBCS or something new? Yeah, possibly. But when you look at the sheer volume and the amount of money that exchanges hands on a daily basis with comic book as a collectible, CGC is not going anywhere. So there's part of me that feels a little embarrassed as I talk about comic books with CGC slabs behind me and I talk about them mishandling certain things. Yeah, it looks a little strange to me. It makes me feel awkward. But I still believe that in the long run, I'm going to be okay, that my investments will be fine. And because I believe that, then I do believe in this system, the system of finding these anomalies with values and acquiring great books from the 80s and the 90s, books that I love, books that I know, and even modern books where you can still kind of find that last copy on the shelf for cover price, like Grimm #1, and you'd happily add that to your collection when it's a series that you know is heating up or has heated up, that already has sort of that built-in value in the market. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.